Welcome to Get Rich Education. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. What's the formula for you to achieve more and live a fulfilling life of satisfaction? It starts by living with and realizing the fact that this is your last life ever. So what are you going to do with it? Then I'm joined by the author of the popular new book, The Wealthy Gardener, about his lessons for prosperity and how residual income from real estate fits into all this today on Get Rich Education. The people that our listeners can't stop talking about are Ridge Lending Group and MLS 42056. They provided you with more loans than anyone. It's where I got my last few loans, and they finance single-family income property up to fourplexes. They're the number one lender for both beginners and veterans. Start your pre-qualification, chat with President Chaley Ridge personally, and you'll end up with your custom plan for expanding your cash flowing portfolio. Start at ridgelendinggroup.com.
You're listening to the show that has created more financial freedom than nearly any show in the world. This is Get Rich Education.
Welcome to GRE, from the Korean Peninsula to the Aegean Sea and across 188 nations worldwide. This is Get Rich Education. Yeah, you're back in that abundant place. You've got to be here for this 295th consecutive week because the scarcity mentality is abundant and the abundance mentality is scarce. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold, your guide and your finance and motivational content vaccine in uncertain times. If you've had a feeling that you can achieve more in your life than the trajectory that you're currently on, it might help to keep in mind that you are living your last life ever. Then what are you going to do with it? When you think about your 8 great-grandparents, ask yourself, how many of them can you honestly name? And you start to see and realize that making a lasting impact is rare. Even making an impact over 3 generations, then, I guess, is rare. Well, what does real estate investing have to do with this? You can buy the time to do what you want to do, including having that impact. Say that $90,000 per year of residual rental income would be enough for you to control your time to then do what you really want to do. Well, great. You're beginning with the end in mind, and then you work your way back. So it would take you 30 units times $250 of cash flow on each one. That's $7,500 per month. That's $90,000 a year. Now money is not a worry for you any longer, and so many people correlate money with worry because however you spend much of your time, it is going to be at a full-time job. Well, if you don't even want to really succeed in what you're doing, then you're doing the wrong thing because your work and your passion should be one in the same, but it's got to pay as well. Buying your time gives you the opportunity to make your work and your passion one in the same. Are you more aspirational? Do you want to be, say, a Major League Baseball pitcher? If you've got a shot and it's what you really want, you've gotta go for it. And even if you only made it to the AA level of minor league baseball, well, hey, did you really fully fail? I don't know. You still played professional baseball. Do you want to become a musician and then move to New York or Nashville and do that? Do you want to run a marathon in under 2 hours, 45 minutes? Maybe it's not all about you. Do you want to donate 10 hours a week at the soup kitchen? Maybe that then is having an impact that's bigger than just you. To paraphrase the late business philosopher Jim Rohn, he said people experience either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. The pain of regret weighs a ton, and the pain of discipline weighs ounces. So live a life free of regrets. Let me give you 2 actionable skills and kind of mindsets to help you here. These are from my personal playbook. One is about your time and one is about your money. When it comes to your time, we're all given the same 168 hours in a week, just like Andrew Carnegie was, just like Mark Cuban has. just like Oprah has. So, you know what holds most people, and maybe you, what holds you back from achieving more? It's not just time, it's focus time. It's that you need more uninterrupted blocks of time. People have too many interruptions in their life. That fractures what would have been focus time. Now, you are going to find this one totally weird, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. This is what works for me. I rarely send a text message. That's only to be used for timely or urgent situations. And texting does have its place, but people that text me their, say, family vacation photos or text me about our plans 2 months from now, I don't reply to those. I would reply to that in an email, and then they kind of get the idea. See, your email is checked when it's convenient for you, and then you have the option of using a full keyboard to reply as well if you like. If you're a friend, hey, cool, I want to see your family vacation photos. But social media is the place for that, or I guess even an email. Even DMs that come in on social media platforms, they would not pop up on my phone. I haven't opted in for that. That stuff is like never urgent. Access that stuff when it's convenient for you. Why do people often text you? That's because it was convenient for them. The sender, well, they weren't considerate of you. So quit inviting unnecessary interruptions into your life. It seems innocuous enough, but that is the formation of a destructive habit, and you're going to win your focus time back. If you're going to say yes to something, then you've got to say no to something else. No's to Instagram DMs popping up on your phone that make you lose 20 minutes responding is one of those little things. Now, sometimes I'd say that texting is the best form of communication. It's just so often abused. See, that right there, that's not a conventional way to behave, but achievers shouldn't want to be conventional. Now, I have my own problems, though, scrolling my social media feed. Yeah, I still have those. Where do those 42 minutes go sorts of times where I didn't feel like I was being conscientious about living my last life ever? We're talking about time skills, so don't let people steal your focus time. Be aware of that. A money skill now, and this is really emblematic of a mindset, is I love interest-only loans for real estate. I have had them throughout my life. Now isn't a good time to try to originate a new one because they largely aren't out there, but they'll be more widely available again. HELOCs are actually interest-onlys, though. I think the scarce mind says, interest only? Oh, that's awful. That way I'm never paying down principal. Well, geez, why would you put any dollars into principal if you didn't have to? Well, when you only have to pay interest, you've preserved your cash flow rather than having to convert it into less liquid equity like you would with a higher payment by paying down principal in addition to interest, because cash flow is the freedom creator. Also, the real equity growth, that's built through leverage, not paying down principal with your own dollar. That's a finance tactic that pulls you toward freedom faster. And my gosh, in addition to everything I just said, record low interest rates add an exclamation point to that mindset. As we're about to hear from the author of the popular new book, The Wealthy Gardener, you'll learn that the book is divided into 3 parts or 3 acts, which are really metaphors for wealth creation: master gardening, wealthy gardening, and then abundant harvesting. It's about lessons on prosperity between father and son. The author, John Soforic, really started getting his life figured out by age 30. His epiphany came as sitting in a graveyard beside his grandfather's tombstone. So I'm going to try to make sure that that story comes up in our chat today. I'm over 30, and at age 30, I really had an epiphany about how I needed to behave unconventionally if I ever wanted to get more out of life. Up until that point in my life, I thought that life was generally about happiness, and most of that time, I even thought that maybe if I worked out this life where I only had to work 20 hours a week, even if it were a low wage and I had to eat Tony's frozen pizza for dinner and watch Netflix all day, that I could be happy because then I wouldn't have to work a lot. Well, I abandoned that mindset completely around that age, and some adults realized that earlier than I did, but too many realize it later. Now, our author guest is a doctor, And that might make you think, his day job provided him with a better than average income, so that's why he was able to achieve financial freedom. But he'll tell you in his book that that's not true. This is available to the everyday person. John Soforic owns 110 rental units, and we'll discuss how much monthly passive income that's generating for him, because I know he's open to that. He has read my book, 7 Money Myths That Are Killing Your Wealth Potential. He recently sent me his, so I didn't have time to read it all yet. Before I introduce you to John, I want to tell you something about him that, well, I'm not even quite sure really how to say this, but from my first impression of him, I guess, I'm trying to express this here, I guess his communication style and his look and his mannerisms are just something that really resonates with me. I think it's about more than the fact that we're both from Pennsylvania. He has this innate vulnerability or compatibility, or maybe it's just likability to me somewhere in there. I'm not quite sure how to say it, but I like talking with him, so let's go. We're talking about lessons for prosperity between father and son today. After retiring with financial freedom at age 49, Dr. John spent 3 years writing a book of life lessons for his son in college. The book provides clarity and faith for an ambitious person, and it declares that the way to wealth is through personal growth. The way to a bigger garden, he contends, is making sure that you outgrow the one that you've got. Today, he has $20,000 in monthly real estate cash flow. I'm going to ask him more about that. His book, called The Wealthy Gardener, is about timeless principles so that everyday people can create a life without money worries. It's a complete philosophy of financial achievement for everyone. I'd like to welcome on to Get Rich Education a remarkable entrepreneur, husband, father, and real estate investor from the Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania area, John Soforic.
Heath, it's my pleasure, man. Thank you for having me.
John, I know that you say that the ambitious life is about satisfaction, not happiness. And, I had a similar realization around age 30 that satisfaction is more than just satisfying me. But tell us why you say that it's about satisfaction and not happiness.
I can speak for myself, and that's all I can speak for, right? So I can tell you that one of the frustrations that I have gone through, Keith, growing up in the middle class and living among the middle class, the blue collar, good people of outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, there are a lot of us who have ambition, but there are a lot of people that don't have it by my standard. And my standard is there's certain people that just cannot not achieve. You just have something in you where you just are compelled to fulfill, actualize whatever that vision is that you want. Ambition. We have to start there. What is ambition? And for me, it's the rare person who actually cannot not go after the thing they want. So here's me in the middle class, and I get to the point of, we're talking about real estate right now, so we'll start there right off the bat. I'll get to 10 houses, 10 rentals, and everybody around me saying, John, you're going to sell these. Everybody sells these. And I'm thinking, I didn't really ask for that opinion, but okay. And then you get to 20 and they start saying, well, when's enough? When are you going to be happy? And then you don't have an appropriate response to these kind of things. It's like the unambitious people seem to attack the ambitious ones. And they start telling you things like, money won't make you happy. Well, I didn't ask for your opinion. And so people come at you like this when they're not ambitious. But for me, I finally found that an answer that worked was, I think I can do more. I'm just trying to fulfill my potential. I believe there's more in me. And so I'm just trying to see what that is. All of a sudden, there was a pause. For the first time in my life, I didn't get this argument, and they kind of nod and walk away. Okay, we're cool with that. He's just trying to fulfill his potential. That's what I was always after. You show me a person whose chief priority in life is happiness, and I'll generally show you a person who's unhappy and getting nothing done. It's a really elusive thing to choose, but you can chase down satisfaction. You can earn that. You can tackle that. And you know what? It puts you in a richer, fuller life because you're living for some sort of contribution. And it's just a better place to be, number one. And number two, you're just doing more for the world and just not thinking of your own self.
In life, the only people that criticize you are people that are doing less than you.
Absolutely. And for some reason, you'll find that ambitious people aren't speaking loudly to the complacent people, but the complacent people are speaking loudly because you're making them uncomfortable. No question about it.
Right.
They're always speaking to you. You and I are friends with Marco Santarelli, and
Yeah.
he was telling me the same story where there's a bucket of crabs, and if one crab tries to go out of the bucket, the other crabs will grab him and pull him back down. And that's just a fact. And he was, bringing that around to saying, well, that's kind of how it works in this world. And I'm sitting back, okay, I'm 55 years old, and I get that bucket and crab story. I understand that.
Yeah, let's not live like crabs. And by the way, John is the youngest looking, fittest looking 55-year-old that I've ever seen, which is just remarkable. But yeah, it's about, I think, having a sense of significance in life more than just your own happiness. And I think a sense of significance brings in those peers and brings in those contemporaries, others around you that you want to make better. So your own happiness matters, but it's not all about that.
Here's what I say, though, Keith, is that, let's say you want to be happy. I say the more direct route is to choose satisfaction. I can't tell you too many people that can tell the difference between satisfaction and happiness anyway, but it's a more clear goal. You can actually catch that one. But if you show me a person saying, I just don't know if I'm happy, am I happy? Well, that's a certain way to misery. You're going to get miserable. But the person who's achieving, the person who's striving, the person who has direction in their life, man, that's the stuff that you really want your kids to be like. You want yourself to be like. You want to be remembered as that person who striving. That's where satisfaction is found.
Well, you bring up the word goal, and a goal is something specific and measurable, and it has a timeline associated with it. So I know you talk about a 5-year crusade for wealth. Can you tell us more about that?
In my own life, there's just such a difference I've seen with people, and maybe myself included, where you're trying to go from your intention to the execution. And I see you must deal with this all the time. You're a great tactician, create strategies. If people just listened to them and did them, you must think, why in the world are they not doing this? And that's the whole question. I think sometimes people don't understand that it's a sacrifice, but it's a temporary sacrifice. And the whole game is, if you think of it like an ocean liner, it takes an ocean liner going in a straight direction about 2 miles to turn and veer off its course. That's what a 5-year crusade is for a person in their life. They can transform everything there is in their life, everything. But you got to put your pedal down and you got to give it 5 years. And after that turn is made, it's a lot easier. And I can tell you in my own life, at the age of 30, I was really down and out. I wasn't satisfied with my life. I was doing everything right. Everybody looking around me said, John, you should be satisfied. Here we go. But I wasn't. And I took those 5 years. I put the pedal down. I worked harder in my clinic. I worked outside of my clinic into real estate like you preach. I did everything. I gave an obsessive effort of 5 years. And by the end of that 5 years, it may not look like a lot to the world. I might just have 2 or 3 rentals going in that direction. But I educated myself. I changed my direction. And once you change that direction, then you just have to continue. And that was just 20 hours a week in my free hours after that.
Once you change your direction, you get this greater realization of opportunities that are missed out there. What takes most people's time, and you're excellent at being highly conscious about how you spend your time, is with a 40-hour-a-week job, and sometimes it's a job that people aren't passionate about. But I know you say that a 40-hour-a-week job is not a sacrifice. Tell us about that.
People don't like to hear that one, do they?
It doesn't sound very convenient, yeah.
Keep in mind, Keith, I was writing a book for my son after I have already gained my own financial freedom, and he was coming out of college. And so these are real truths. I wasn't looking to sell a book. I'm in uncharted waters. This whole thing is an unintentional consequence of that book. What I was telling him was, listen, Mike, if you're just doing the bare minimum, that's what you have to do. A sacrifice implies a choice. Am I not right? You're going to try to sacrifice something that you want. You're giving up something you want for something you want more. And that's what a sacrifice is. Let's say you stop working that job. It's a sacrifice. Oh, poor me. I'm working 40 hours a week. I'm sacrificing from my family. Guys, that's not a choice. It's not a choice in my life. My clinic was not a choice. My family couldn't eat without that. That's the bare minimum. That's like saying, I'm going to walk 20 miles today with a gun to my head. That's not a sacrifice. That's just called staying alive. And so the 40-hour job for a lot of us just pays the bills. That's called staying alive. And so if we want freedom, if we want more, we have to look for extra sacrifices. And extra sacrifices come in that choice time. That's the time that we have 70 hours a week to do something with. What are you doing after work? What are you doing on the weekends? That's where the sacrifice is. And it's not forever, but just you got to put the pedal down temporarily.
Now, a lot of people think about work-life balance and finding that balance point. I know that you say that work-life balance is dangerous, however. Tell us why work-life balance is dangerous, John.
You're trying to get me in trouble, Keith. So dangerous. What do I mean by that? That's where the median is right now. And I would say in our society, we have this worship towards a work-life balance, right? You work a little and you have a lot of time off. That puts you on the median. And, I've read your book, and that's a good book, by the way.
Thank you.
85-page book, and it's just down to no nonsense. And you talk about average, the dangers of average. I say the same thing. You know what the most dangerous place in America is? Is the median, where you're just right down the middle. It looks like you're in the middle of the herd, so it should be a safe spot. That is the least safe spot in the world because you're not uncomfortable enough to do something, and you're sticking in the middle, and you're just waiting for the vulnerable thing to happen. You're just getting by. And look at the average retirement of the average person. They have $160,000 at retirement. There's not a lot of money there. There's a lot of vulnerability there. People that are looking for balance, they're usually ignoring the problems in their life, and they're not facing the true fears that are real. You should be looking around and considering, what happens if I lose my job? Okay, do you really want balance? What happens if we get in a wreck? I can't work. What happens if, let's talk about the calamities of life. Balance is the dangerous point because it puts you in a situation where you just have no position of strength financially, period.
Okay, you're sort of talking about allocating your time the same way everyone else would, which really isn't an efficient thing to do. Staying in the middle of the herd is safe, maybe, but staying in the middle of the herd is not aspirational. It doesn't lead to an exceptional life. One of Mark Twain's lesser-known quotes, I think, is appropriate here. Mark Twain said, "Go out on a limb. That's where the fruit is."
Yeah, that's in my book. I think that we all have to pay attention and sometimes think about worst-case scenarios because they're coming. If you haven't lived long enough, maybe you're just going to be an optimist that thinks everything will work out well for me. Well, things work out a lot well if you face your fears and do something about them.
Be intentional.
Sure. Imagine what the worst case scenarios are and prevent that. I mean, I didn't go into real estate at the age of 30 because it was just a flying joy fest. I was trying to create a retirement income. I was trying to protect and provide for my family. I was trying to build a fortress that would make us safe. Those were my primary motives. I was thinking about worst case scenarios, and that really drove me because now we're talking about whys and motives and a lot of important stuff that will push your persistence when the going gets tough.
When we talk about whys and motives, John, I know you had a critical pivot point in your life that helped change the future trajectory of your life and your life's ambitions. Tell us about that.
I know you and I have spoken before, and there was a time when I graduated as a chiropractor. I was known as Dr. John most of my life. But the problem with that is that I graduated with $200,000 worth of student debts. So in my 20s, I'm working and working and working and working up to the age of 30. And by the age of 30, I have 2 kids and a wife. I'm still just working for trading my hours for dollars. I'm paying food, shelter, clothing, debt. And I'm 30. I'm still in debt. And it just wasn't okay for me. There was just something about that 30 that just signified that you're really not okay. And I was really extremely dissatisfied. And I got in touch with that. I know there was a day where I went for a walk all by myself. The family didn't know where I was going. I can see it like it was yesterday. I took a walk in my yard, in my backyard, and I walked throughout the town just mulling it all over. I sat beside a tombstone that day, and I was just thinking about the last 10 years of my life where, God, where was I? I expected to be so much better by now, right? At the age of 30, don't you expect to be like captain of the world by then? And boy, that expectation has to really fall short now.
Yeah.
And so I'm sitting there, and I realized that what I really did was just traded all these years. And what did I have to show for it? And it feels a lot like wage slavery. And I don't use that term lightly. When you have no hope and you're just trading your time for subsistence, it's a lot like slavery. I'm sitting there that day beside a tombstone, and that tombstone was my grandfather's. Now, no matter what a pity party I'm having for myself or contemplating my own existence, I couldn't help but feel that I had nothing compared to the slavery of that man, because He went into a hole every day of his life and came out 10 hours later. He was a coal miner, and he would do this 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. He did it 40 years of his life until he died. He died of black lung disease, just like they all did. He left his family in total destitution, just like they all did. My parents started not with a trailer, but with a half trailer because of that life of his. You can just imagine that every day of his life, what he felt like. And the sad part is that he actually had a Major League Baseball offer at the age of 20. He could have gone that route, but he had a family and he wanted to provide. And so here's a person who took the responsible route, and unfortunately, it led him into coal mining. And he just gave his life for that, to be responsible to his family. And I'm sitting there, and it was just an emotional day for me because I realized I wasn't where I wanted to be. And so myself, I said, I'm going to do the same. I'm going to be responsible for my kids, my family. But there's just no way I can lose this game of money. I just can't go into a hole every day of my life. Even though I'm dressed up, it does suck the energy out of you, the life out of you, when you have no hope in life and you're just trading hours for dollars. So I made a big goal. I decided that I'm going to have a retirement income of $240,000. I'm going to pay for my kids' college educations. They're going to come out not feeling the same pain I feel. And I went to work and I went to battle. And 20 years later, at the age of 49, I did that. I achieved those goals. So that's my story.
That motivation came from an interesting place, being by yourself in the graveyard next to your grandfather's gravestone, thinking about how you would like your life to be different when you were age 30. The difference between who you are and what you want to be is what you do.
Absolutely. And what you do is so much compelled by what you think and who you think you are, and building your beliefs. It's to get them in line with what you want. All that kind of invisible stuff that sometimes we just don't see. But it's like the root of the tree. We always see the leaves. We forget the root system. And that's all that, the mindset, the invisible beliefs, the desire, the ambition that you have, that God knows why you have it, but you have it. That kind of stuff. Sure.
The pursuit of money appears shallow to some people until you reach a point in life, and some people never reach this point of realization that money and income can buy the freedom that everyone ultimately wants.
Honestly, coming from my background, I don't have a whole lot of patience with that attitude. I think that, boy, that sure is nice if you can say that, but I bet you're either going to, A, come from a privileged background where you just don't really understand what the rest of us are going through, the great majority of America, or B, you're just going to poo-poo the idea because you don't want to sacrifice. It's just a whole lot easier watching TV than to stick your neck out there. And you have to work in these kind of games with no certainty of pay. That's the challenge of this whole thing. You have to go out there, and there's no reward in your free hours. People always want to trade their hours. They always want to go for at the job, you're getting paid per hour. So they understand if they work 20 hours more, time and a half, that makes sense to them. But let's say you go out in real estate now and you're 20 hours like I did. I can guarantee you, my doctor friends, my chiropractor friends, other people, even my patients, they did not understand me. It looked to them like I was doing something dirty, something below me, but they don't understand passive income. I was building passive income. It's not easily visible. And so you have to get out there. It's not easily visible, and there's no guarantee of pay. The payoff's down the road. And I don't think people want to take that risk. They don't want to.
You're listening to Get Rich Education. We're talking with John Soforic, the author of The Wealthy Gardener. When he comes back, we're going to talk more about the motivation of ambition and how exactly did he get $20K in passive monthly real estate income. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. We'll be right back. Property investors can get killed with maintenance costs. That's less likely when you buy brand new construction. Let me tell you about JWB Real Estate Capital in bustling Jacksonville, Florida. They pioneered the build-to-rent model where you can invest in new construction, turnkey rental property. That's why JWB was featured on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. To learn more and see inventory, start now at newconstructionturnkey.com. Finally, with Total Control Financial, get checkbook control of your existing 401k and IRA funds to invest in real estate. Yes, you can move your retirement money into your own checking account, but you must avoid the little-known tax that you'll get hammered with in a self-directed IRA. Instead, start your QRP. Learn more and get your free copy of the QRP book by text messaging QRP in all capital letters to 72,000.
This is Rich Dad, Poor Dad author Robert Kiyosaki. Listen to Get Rich Education with Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Welcome back to Get Rich Education. We're talking with the author of The Wealthy Gardener, John Soforic. We're talking about ambition and how you can do more with less and how you help get an abundant mindset. And I think part of the problem for people, John, is that people just get stuck. People say, I don't have any time to get started in real estate. I work a full-time job. I might have a family. I just don't know how to get on top of it and do it. So what would you say to a person that feels stuck in building their wealth?
I can speak from my own experience, Keith, where I've seen that a million times. It's the number one excuse why people just stay where they are. They're so busy, they're tired, they have a family, they have a full-time job, and when they do have time, they don't have any energy for anything anyway. So how the heck am I supposed to change? And I say, well, I can speak for me. What did I do? Because I was that guy. I had a wife, I had 2 kids, I had a chiropractic clinic, and I started to figure out how to get time. The schedule is where the rubber meets the road. Eventually, we can talk about all this mindset stuff. We can talk about goals. We can talk about all this stuff. But what's your schedule? What's there? I actually tracked it, man. I scheduled everything, and I tried to figure out where my time was all going. And I would try to get rid of things where there was any kind of lack of purpose, to be honest with you. And the challenge with that is that a lot of the things that I was trying to find were good activities. Like I wasn't doing crazy things. I was living a good life, but I had to pull out maybe some enjoyable reading time of John Grisham's. Nobody's going to say that's going to kill you, but I got to get some time. So now what do? So, okay, you're done with that. Now you pull out a little bit more time. There's a lot of sports on my TV. Pull out of that. You say, well, you got to live. Okay, go ahead and live. But those of us with ambition, if you want something, you have to sacrifice something that you like now to get something better later. You just have to. And so those are the activities that make time for other things. And I pulled those out of my schedule, and I gave a lot of time to education on real estate. That's the first goal. I mean, your show, study, immerse, go deep. I mean, my God, look what you're doing. Just study and go deep. You have to educate yourself. And there are hours for that. Once you build up the education for it, absolutely, there's the action time when you step into the field. You go out there with realtors. You start looking for investment properties. If that's what your course is going to be, that is a step you cannot not do. What I learned to do, Keith, is that you really have to prioritize what are the impact activities toward the goal that you've set. So what am I going to do if I have a goal for $240,000 passive? I've learned that there's 2 questions in my own life that I use to guide myself. Number 1, if I only have 2 hours a day, period, to get this goal done, what activities would fill those 2 hours? So it's an imaginary time constraint. 2 hours, 120 minutes. What gets it done? That number 1 question. So in real estate, you're getting out there, you're looking at properties, and you're making offers. People say, well, there's nothing out there for sale. Yes, there is. It's all for sale. You have to make an offer that you can't say no to. It's your job to make an offer, not the seller. You're the one who makes the offers.
Right.
That's how it works. And so there's always these activities that you can do if you just quit making the excuses. And you got to get yourself into the process a little bit. I know for a fact, and I've seen this, where people's belief increases, they find the time. They find the time for what they want to do. If they're not doing it, well, they just don't want it more than they want to do other things. And so the time is there, but you really got to watch out for the average activities and then move into the essential activities.
That's right. Before someone brings something new into their life that is outside of running with the herd, I think a great first question to ask themselves is, what are they going to give up first? And then once they've adequately answered that, then they can go in and fill in that 2 hours per day or whatever it is.
I don't know how else you do it. I mean, you just don't do it. If you can't control your time, you can't control your life, you can't control your outcomes, you can't. You can't. It's really where the rubber meets the road. You look at me right now, like what in my life now, I'm gone past the building the wealth part of my life. I'm 55 years old. I'm still analyzing my schedule, my weekly schedule. How do I want to shift this or that? And all throughout my life, I was doing that. One time I was sitting at a beach with my wife and I'm looking out over the horizon and we're coming back the next day. And she said, "What's on your mind right now?" She could tell I'm thinking. I said, I'm thinking about why I don't want to come back to my life tomorrow. And she says, "Well, that's normal. It's end of the vacation. Everybody's like that." I said, "Well, you know what? If that's what's normal, I don't want normal. I don't want normal. That's not okay for me." And so you rearrange that schedule. You choose. It's an intentional life. And that's how I've always moved it forward.
You did not wake up to be mediocre.
I agree that I think sometimes we get beat down so hard that we forget what we used to dream of when we were younger. That's what I believe.
That's right. Just like I sign off every show with, don't quit your daydream. A lot of people forgot what that daydream even is at this point, and that's why a reminder like that's needed.
Can't agree more. And I noticed that your book goes a lot into mindset in the initial pages of it all. And it's where you have to start. You have to start with that kind of stuff. Like, don't forget who you are. Who do you think you are? Raise that. What are your goals? Raise that. Think about the end in sight. I just had this conversation with somebody this week. They're saying, "I don't quite know what to do in this decision." I said, "Man, Stephen Covey, the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, start with the end in mind. What do you want that day to look like? What's the ideal day? Start there." And that usually brings you backwards. Then you write the book backwards after that.
I'd ask people to remind themselves that you, the listener, are living your last life ever. If you let that sink in and think that through, that can be a substantial motivator. You might have a religious faith that says you have an afterlife, but at least here on this earth, you are living your last life ever. And that's something you might have been thinking about, John, that day where you sat down next to your grandfather's gravestone. Your family didn't even know where you were, and you told yourself, there's got to be more in this, and the change is really up to me.
You know what, Keith, there's certain moments of truth, man. I really think your life hangs in the balance of how you respond to those moments. There's so many times you could just say, "All right, well, I guess I'm just going to make the best effort I can at being happy with what I've got." Settling is a common possibility. People do that all the time. And quite frankly, a lot of religions will tell you to do that. Be grateful for what you have. Well, I've never quite figured out how to make that work for me, because for me, I always felt like if I don't have what I want, I can grow myself. I can get myself bigger. In terms of the wealthy gardener, the metaphor, it's always about increasing the size of a garden. How do you do that? Well, you just increase it incrementally, little by little by little. And that's how you build yourself up. And the goal that's impossible right now, well, if you grow yourself in 5 years, it's not going to be nearly as impossible, is it? So you get to different vantage points, and then you can think more. It's about personal growth, just like we said at the very start of this show.
And John, you don't just talk about mindset. You've actually done this thing. You have gone and done. And what you've done is you've accumulated $20,000 in residual monthly income from your real estate. Tell us more about that 20K, and was that a goal? And tell us about the income that you've created.
It was absolutely a goal. When I was sitting there at 30 years old, I was defeated. And so again, starting with the end in mind was I wanted to get so far beyond the worries of money that I didn't have to think about it. And I also had this vision in my mind that I wanted to build a business and keep that business moving, even though I was retired. Nobody wants to sit on a beach, and that's not what I was after. I have ambition. I like the idea of contributing in life. So I needed a certain excess in my life to accomplish everything that my vision was for myself. So how does that work? Well, first of all, you get some seed money. You have to figure out how to get some money. No doubt about it. And for a lot of us, that means work. You start working and you put the pedal down and you give a sacrifice. And then I went into real estate. I went into it very cautiously, one single family, then another single family. I chose single families because there was an easy exit strategy.
Right.
You can always sell those to homeowners, not to investors. Here's a good story for you, Keith. One of my turning points was I was just doing this rental thing. I'm in the first 5 of my rentals. I'm buying single families, and I buy this one. If you've ever been in this long enough, there's one that just gets you. Everything goes wrong. The contractors cheat, you fire them. You bring in new contractors, they cheat, you fire them. Everything that you can't imagine goes wrong, and all of a sudden you're sitting there so far over cost that you're screwed. And so that's where I was. This was not going to work as a rental now. So I guess I'm going to sell this thing and try to salvage some of the money. So long story short, it comes 6 months later, everything went wrong. I sell the thing and I tell everybody around me, I got $200 profit on this thing. And they all laugh at me like I'm an idiot. And I was like, wait a minute, you guys don't understand. You don't understand. Everything went wrong. Everything went wrong. You go to the stock market and you see everything going wrong, you're not going to have your money. I had my money.
And you also didn't get a lesson from it. You got a lesson from what you did.
Oh, it was an aha moment. You mean if you buy right, this is risk-free? Yes. That's when the lights turned on in my head. So absolutely. Then I moved forward. And I would say this, that what I found, Keith, is that you can't plot this linearly. As the snowball rolls, there's bigger opportunities down there that you can't even imagine. All of a sudden, I'm approaching apartment complexes. I'm approaching 8 duplexes on one block. Those are decisions that are now within my power to choose yes or no to. And so there's an exponential growth to this stuff that people can't imagine when they're younger. That's how it works.
And to clarify, that is $20K per month of real estate residual income. That's net cash flow from your rental property. That's after you've paid your mortgages, your insurance, your maintenance, your property tax, your property management, and your utilities.
Absolutely. So you're looking at about a 50% expense ratio for me. So I'm somewhere probably around 45,000 in terms of gross monthly income. And from that, a big chunk of it does get out there, So when you preach about CapEx and these kind of 50% ratios, once you get bigger, you start to see these numbers. They are real. That's exactly what the net is for me right now. And it's like a river. It really is. Like I'm not being affected right now. Not yet. We're in the coronavirus era here. I guess if this podcast is listened to at a different era, they'll look back at this as time in history as a really uncertain time for a lot of us. But so far, my renters are okay. They're still paying. And so we're okay there. That's the vulnerability for me, is when the middle class gets hit and they can't pay that income. But I do have a margin of safety where I can drop my rents. I hope my renters aren't listening here. I can drop my rents and still be okay, right?
Like I've said elsewhere, in times of recession, depression, or uncertainty, your cash flow becomes your cushion. So you always do want to buy with that margin. And John, I know that you invest predominantly in B-class neighborhoods. Pittsburgh is also an area that has some submarkets that are investor advantage. But really what I want to ask you on your path to building your real estate portfolio, starting with single family homes, then going to duplexes, and then purchasing some bigger properties, is your treatment of debt. Did you build this portfolio using debt? Some people talk about how, they think they should retire debt before they start investing. So tell us about your use of debt.
So my idea of debt is, this is what I've always told my kids, is that, fire can burn down a house, but if it's in a fireplace and well contained, it could be your best friend. I have the discipline, the mind to handle debt. So I've seen it done wrong. In fact, some of my friends have over leveraged. Now, debt can be bad to them, right? And I know you're talking about debt on income generating vehicles. So we're not even talking about the rest of it, swimming pools and cars and all that kind of stuff. We're talking about income generating assets. Yeah, you can go overboard, but I could have never climbed this fast without debt, but I had to really keep it tight. And so I kept it in such a conservative ratio, that it was always very, very safe. And I always had a lot of cash flow that I could drop and still make those payments. In fact, you'll see that a lot of people would probably say this isn't smart. I'm doing 30-year mortgages on my properties to get that monthly down so low because I want the cash flow. People say, wow, no, go 15, go. No, man. No. My business is called Evergreen for a reason. It's all about cash flow. It's to keep in my mind, cash flow. That's all that matters to me. Cash on cash return.
If you try to retire your debt before you invest, well, you're not going to be able to control very much. And yeah, much like your fire analogy, I think of debt as being like a knife. It can harm people or hurt people. A knife can maim someone, or a knife can fillet a really nice salmon for dinner.
I wanted to live without debt. I would have loved to. I would have liked the idea of it, but I could not get to where I wanted to without it. So I'm looking at a house. I might have $50,000 on my mortgage on this house that I'm renting. I only have a payment of $350 per month. Do you know how hard it is to try to pay off $50,000 to wipe out $350 a month? It just doesn't make sense because I could make so much more money with that $50,000 somewhere else. And so sometimes you just have to do the math, and it's not rational. I couldn't do it. So I grew fast due to debt. No question about it.
People that favor the 15-year mortgage over the 30-year typically say something relatively simplistic like, look at the amount of interest I'm saving. But as we know, with the 30-year, that lowers your debt service payment, which increases your cash flow. And you'd rather have $1 of cash flow than you would $1 of equity. And you're getting $1 of equity built faster with the 15-year at the expense of your cash flow.
To expand on that, Keith, I say, okay, to those people, let me say this. Get the 30-year and pay a little more and pretend it's a 15 if you want.
Now you're flexible.
Right. So if all hell breaks loose, you can still come down on your rents a little bit. You're safer. It's all about safety.
And I know your style is to buy properties that don't take major fix-ups. They just take a little bit of lipstick, and the strategy has really gotten you where you are as a buy and hold investor. And I think of buy and hold investing sort of like gardening. You plant small down payment seeds, and then you take very little of your time to nurture that garden over time, which is sort of the opposite of a flipper that has more of a hunter mentality. They might shoot down a big piece of game, and that feels like a nice return for a while, but to eat again, they have to go out and they have that pressure of shooting another piece of big game. But yeah, John, when we think about the gardener analogy with buy and hold, your book is called The Wealthy Gardener. Tell us more about that.
Why the wealthy gardener? The garden has always been a metaphor, Keith. I was talking to my son about not just about how to prosper financially, but how to prosper in life. These are the kind of lessons you want to leave behind for your kids when you're a dad. I really wanted to see him to come full circle to what we spoke about before. I really wanted him to be able to use his full potential. And so there was a garden metaphor once. I just love Earl Nightingale. He told a story once of this pastor walking by this beautiful farm, and the farm was just manicured and it was just painted. There was tree-lined streets, and the pastor just leaned on a fence and just admired this beautiful scene. And the farmer came over to the pastor and they exchanged greetings. And the pastor said, God sure has given you this beautiful farm. And the farmer rubbed his chin and he said, he has. And I'm grateful, but you should have seen this place when he had it all to himself. That's the garden metaphor. Yeah, we're given a place, we're given a plot, but man, it's up to us to shape that however we want. We're given time, we're given opportunity, we're given the same 24 hours that was given to Einstein, that was given to all the greats throughout history. How are we going to use that time? And so that was the garden metaphor. And we can grow ourselves bigger. We can grow ourselves bigger in that time to get what we want. If we're not getting what we want, we need to grow ourselves to grow a bigger garden.
WealthyGardener.com is the website. I know your book has an awful lot of sales. It really has been a popular and well-received book. What's the best place for our listeners to find that book?
It was bought by Penguin, Keith, so I assume it's everywhere. Everywhere right now is closed, so Amazon is probably a good place to start. That's where we go. I would say this, though, if I could plug one thing here. The audiobook, there's just something special about that thing. I had Dennis Kleinman, the narrator. I made him do it. This guy's just a stud, and he's got this English accent. Hey, John, how you doing, John? I said, Dennis, you're doing this. You don't have a choice. If you don't do this, I'm coming to your house, and I'm going to camp in your front yard. And he agreed to do it. And he told me, he says, every book has a song. I'm going to just figure out what this song is, and then I'm going to sing it for an narrator. That's how he talks, real poetic and artist, like an artist. And I said, all right, Dennis, here's how it works. If every book has a song, I want you to understand this. I understand this is a money book, but this is a love song. is a love song between a father and a son. You got it? Okay, John, we'll talk. It's all over, right? This is all done and recorded. He says, you know, John, that was a love song, and I couldn't finish it out without breaking down and crying several times in between. And I'm telling you, Dennis just did a world-class job, just world-class. That's why that book hit number 46 worldwide on Audible. That's the one that's a special creation, really.
You're speaking to an audience that I can tell you for sure learns through audio. The book, again, is called The Wealthy Gardener. Though John earned his wealth in real estate, the book's really more about philosophy. John Soforic, thanks so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you, man. I appreciate and agree with your philosophy 100%.
Yeah, I really appreciate John Soforic. He says go for satisfaction, not happiness. And as a byproduct of the satisfaction, you'll end up happier anyway. I do recommend the book, The Wealthy Gardener, Lessons on Prosperity Between Father and Son. His book weaves in threads of some of your favorite classic thought leaders like Zig Ziglar and such with gardening metaphors. It's half fiction and half nonfiction, and he really has an interesting reason for why he wrote it that way. It's so his son would listen rather than feel like he was being preached to. So the book's relevant to most anyone, but it's especially good if you happen to be a father or a son. Then it's almost mandatory reading. There's something that I almost don't even like to say out loud because it's such an inconvenient truth. I hate that this is true. And this is not from the book. This is me talking now. It really is about you getting comfortable with being uncomfortable. Then once you've made the uncomfortable situation comfortable again, go find something that makes you uncomfortable again. Well, how often do you reiterate that uncomfortable process? One way is to try writing your own obituary. Really, take 20 to 30 minutes to sit down, think deeply, and write your own obituary. Would you be satisfied with what you wrote? What would people say about you? Did you really have an outsized impact on others, or was it all about you? Or has your life up to this point been all about your own accomplishments, and would you be all right with that? Well, that's for you to answer when you read your own obituary. Thanks to John Soforic today. If you want to announce a call to greatness in your life, do it. And be motivated on the premise that wherever you are living your last life ever. I'm your host, Keith Weinhold. Don't quit your daydream.
Nothing on this show should be considered specific, personal, or professional advice. Please consult an appropriate tax, legal, real estate, financial, or business professional for individualized advice. Opinions of guests are their own. Information is not guaranteed. All investment strategies have the potential for profit or loss. The host is operating on behalf of Get Rich Education, LLC exclusively.
The preceding program was brought to you by your home for wealth building, GetRichEducation.com.